It's become an obligation and a responsibility to me now. If I want to show up as the best version of myself in the relationships that matter most, then I have to go and do things that are good for me.
Welcome to the People Powered Solutions podcast. In this show, you'll gain expert advice and tips on building a thriving workplace culture with happy employees. I'm your host, Lorianne Duguay, and I'm thrilled to be spending this time with you today. Hello and welcome to another episode of the People Powered podcast. Folks, we are mixing things up for you this week. As you all know, before we invite a guest to be on the show, I do a bit of a fit check one-on-one with the prospective guest, just to make sure that there's alignment there and that the story aligns with the story that we want to share with our audience. Well, earlier this week, I met with Trevor Muir and our guest today, and in talking with him, he initially shared his story, and then we segued into his company's story, both of which are crazy fascinating. And since we like to keep our shows to approximately 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, depending on how fascinating the conversation is, I thought we would mix it up this time and do a bit of a series when it comes to SurePoint and Trevor. So we are going to start off this week with an episode that will showcase Trevor's story, because it is really an impressive one and really an inspiring one. And through his stories, he shares so many insights that are applicable throughout all spheres of life that I thought it would warrant a solo episode just on the Trevor story. And then we're going to be recording a subsequent episode, so stay tuned, on the SurePoint story, which, believe it or not, is just as fascinating. So mixing it up for you folks in our Culture Secret Sauce series. Welcome, Trevor, to the show.
Thank you so much. I love that Culture Secret Sauce and had such an awesome conversation with you, Lori. And so thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. I'm honored.
I'm thrilled that you're willing to share your story with our audience. So before, normally I would say before we deep dive into the culture at SurePoint, but we're not even going to go there today. I'm actually going to let you do most of the talking, because one of the things that came out loud and clear when we initially met is the fact that you are a fabulous storyteller. So I am going to let you do what you do best, and I'm going to share with our audience how Trevor got to doing what Trevor does today.
Yeah, thank you. When we talked last time, it kind of went down a rabbit hole, and I ended up talking about my journey to where I am today and why I became the leader that I did, or how I became the leader that I did at SurePoint, and how I made some of the decisions I made when we were facing challenging times. And through that, I was telling you that I grew up on a farm in a small community in northern Alberta called Elmworth, and it was really small. Like the population of the town, I think, was 15 people, and the farming community surrounded it. And K to 9, there was less than 100 kids. And so I grew up modest, grew up without a lot, but had everything that we needed, and learned to work hard, and learned about responsibility and obligation, and being a sense of community. And I learned all that stuff. And as I was growing up, got married, started a family, went through some things, and started a company when I was in my 30s, 32 years old. I started SurePoint with some friends, and 10 of us had come together, and we were all from the same area, farming communities, and we just wanted to create a company that was fun, and that we'd all just go to work and we'd just do all this good stuff. And the company grew on us like crazy. It went from 15 people with 10 owners to 250 people from 2003 to 2008. So, and I tell people jokingly, we were successful in spite of ourselves. And I don't think we even actually realized what we had done, but we had created a culture. We didn't talk about culture, but we would need to hire a few people because we'd have some work. And then those people would bring more work, which would need to bring more people. And so we had a lot of success in a lot of ways. And in 2008, we had an opportunity to sell SurePoint to a private equity group, or a portion of. And so that day changed my life financially, and for my family and I. We always lived okay. Like we always had enough. I could work lots, and you can make good money in the industry. But we never had a lot of money. And the day after the sale, all of a sudden our life changed financially. And at a time in my life where I believed I had every single thing that everybody wants or needs to be happy. I had a beautiful wife and kid. I'm close to my parents. I'm close to my sisters. I had a large friend network. And now all of a sudden we're living in a big fancy acreage. We have the horses in the barn, the shop, all the toys, the quad, the boat. And I even went and bought a sports car and had this fancy sports car parked inside my garage, believing that, this is the things that make people happy. And the reality was, Lori, as I shared with you, my life began to spiral out of control after the sale, and I wasn't exactly sure why, but I was starting to make some poor choices, and some things were happening. And about 3 years after, or 4 years after, I was separated from my wife. I was living downtown Edmonton in a really fancy condo, and I was alone. I was still working for SurePoint, but things were really, really tough there as well. And all of these things that were important to me were starting to disintegrate. But here was the thing. Even then, I would tell people, like, I'd go to work, I'd be out socializing with my friends, and they'd say, "Hey, how are things?" And I'd be like, "Oh, they're good. Yeah, they're great." My wife and I are separated. But that's okay because she's kind of a pain in my butt. And my kid's turning 18, and he's really not talking much to me, but that's what 18-year-old boys do. And things at SurePoint aren't going really well, but I've been here a long time. Maybe it's time to move on. And so I would put on this, I'd tell people, but I would be positive, like, "Oh yeah, it's all good." And
Almost
the
like
reality,
faking it till you make it.
right? Yeah,
Rationalizing all of the kind of more negative aspects of your life in a
yeah,
way
yeah.
under a light that just allowed you to sweep it under the rug and just keep going.
Exactly. But the reality was, when I got back to that condo at night and I closed the door, I was like a 5-year-old afraid of the dark. I was scared. I was sad. I was lonely, and I would often lay in the bedroom in the fetal position with the lights off all night. And I would get up the next day and I would do the same thing over again. I'd go and tell everybody how no matter what, things were good and things were great. And one day I lived there for about 10 or 11 weeks only. And one day I woke up on a Monday morning in May on the bathroom floor with an almost overwhelming desire to end my life. And here I was, a guy who had all the stuff. I had everything. And I just couldn't bear the pain I was under anymore. And I was starting to cry. And I got up off the floor and I choked back my tears. And I had made a commitment to myself when I was in my early 20s. I had a breakdown because a girl broke my heart. And I was like, I am never going to cry again. And I now know the power of intention. I looked in the mirror that day. I'd cried for hours on the bathroom floor again. It seems to be my place. And I got up and I looked in the mirror and I washed my face. And I remember saying to myself, I was about 21 years old, I am never going to feel this way again. And so from 21 to 39, I hardly cried at all. Even when I lost somebody that I loved, I'd hardly cry. And here I'm at 39 years old, choking back the tears. I get up to wash my face and I look in the mirror, and for the first time in my adult life, or maybe ever, my eyes caught my eyes. I was just, for a brief second, I looked at myself in the mirror, and the thought hit me, what would I tell a friend if they told me they have all this stuff? They have the wife, the kid, the parents, the fancy acreage, the money in the bank, the sports car, but this is how they felt. I would be like, "Oh man, I get it. And both are real. Like, both are actual real. Please go get some help. Please don't give up." And that thought hit me, please get some help. And I washed my face and I went and grabbed my phone and I started to Google help. And it came up psychiatrist, psychologist, and all these things. Here's how sick.
Sorry, I want to pause you right there.
Yeah.
Because I think you just asked yourself a really important question. And as a coach, it's a question that we use with our clients very often. In that moment where you've got that level of despair, that level of hopelessness, like there's no other way, I I encourage our listeners to do that same exercise of stepping outside yourself. And if you were a friend and you were hearing everything that you're feeling, what advice would you give that friend? If a friend
Yeah.
came to you with that situation, what advice would you give that friend? Not yourself, because, God forbid that we be our own guide, but if it was someone else, what would you do about it? And it sounds like you gave yourself the best advice. Sorry, I totally paused there.
No, no, that was good.
Really
Yeah.
wanted to highlight that as a good takeaway for the audience, that in those moments where we really don't know where to go next, what to do next, and we think, oh, I need to talk to someone, be that someone to yourself. Step outside yourself and challenge yourself that if you were hearing this from someone else, what would you say? And do that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's awesome, and that that's as I've had some transformation in my life and did a lot of self work. I realized that's a form of self love actually, and that's a whole other topic. And and really this all came back to that as I sort of unpack the rest of this.
Absolutely. I
I was
use it. Another example is how we speak to our body. Would you
yeah.
allow someone else to talk to you or to your child or to your friend or to your spouse the way that you speak to yourself? If the answer is no, absolutely not, then there's some fixing to be had.
I heard one time, I don't want to digress too far, but this is important. I heard one time that a thought will travel 200,000 miles. A thought will travel 200,000, any thought. And so if you think something positive or negative, and I saw this speaker talk about this, and I saw him do exercise with somebody where the whole group thought a negative thought about this person and then a positive thought and how much stronger this person was. And I left that conference thinking, what if the math is like, what if they totally screwed up on the math? What if it's not 200,000 miles? Like, what if it's only 2 miles? Like, what if they totally watched it? And I'm like, if it's 2 miles, if a thought is powerful enough for 200 feet that it can impact a human being's not only psychology, but also their physiology, their strength, the chemistry in their body. What happens when it doesn't have to travel at all? Like, what happens when it is in yourself? Like it has to go, like, I don't know, a few inches maybe. And so I was like, maybe the math, maybe their calculator was wrong and they weren't 200,000 miles. But what if it's 200 feet?
Yeah.
And that was a profound thing for me. So when we're talking about this, I think that it's very relevant. I look back now. At the time, Laurie, I was just in a really, really tough spot, as I'll explain. So when I got up off that floor and I started Googling, I was like, I'm not going to a psychiatrist or psychologist because what would my friends and family think?
Oh yeah,
And
God forbid, there's taboo
right.
with that, right?
But here's the insanity of that. I was like seriously contemplating ending my life. I tell people the moment on the bathroom floor was hell on earth for me. I was equally afraid to live and afraid to die. I was so afraid that I was going to kill myself, and I was so afraid I might wake up the next day feeling exactly the same way I felt that day. And for me, that was hell on earth. So I Googled this stuff, and thankfully the universe guided me to this link that was a lady who was a life coach. And so I was like, oh, well, I can sell that to my friends. I hire a coach.
Less taboo in your mind.
Player. Yeah. So I sent an email miraculously within 30 minutes ish. I get a response back, and she had a cancellation for the next day, which is, you can't get into some of these folks for months. And so I went and saw her the next day, and I go and see her, and I'm all cleaned up and I'm looking good. And, I've got a big smile on my face. And I sit down with her, and she says, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm great. Yeah, I'm good. My wife and I are separated. She doesn't want me in the house. My son's not talking to me. I might lose, be kicked out of a company I co-founded. But other than that, everything's good. And I'm just here so you can sort of help me fine tune a few things in my life. And she said to me, you're not good. You're not okay. And I was like, no, I'm fine. And she said, no, you're not. And then after kind of back and forth, she said to me, you're not okay. I am very worried about you and I can't help you. And I was like, I am fine. I'm good. And she said, I can't help you. Do not leave this office. Please do not leave this office. Promise me you'll stay. I will be 2 minutes. I'll be right back. Do not leave. And I said, okay, I'll stay. And she leaves and she comes back like 2 minutes later, maybe less. And in walks this great big guy, puts out his hand and says, hi, Trev. My name's Dr. Gons. And Anne says, you're struggling with a few things. And I was like, I'm fine. She's got me freaked out, but I'm fine. He said, I'm sure you are. I said, do you have a few minutes? So he takes me into a different room. I talked to him for about 10 minutes and I leave, and I felt a little bit better, actually. I didn't really tell him anything. And I started to see him a couple times a week for a few months and then for an extended period of time. But I started to go and see him, and I was unpacking some stuff for sure. And he kept saying to me things like you can't give what you don't have. And I didn't really truly understand that. And he was trying to, he'd talk about bank accounts and emotional bank accounts, and he was trying to really get me to understand this stuff. And I'm not grasping it totally, but I'm feeling better. And one day I sat down in his office after about 10 sessions, and I walk in and I sit down, and he doesn't say anything to me other than this. He says, hey, Trev, how are you feeling today? And I recognize now that up until that point, I don't remember anybody ever asking me how I was feeling unless I was sick or in the hospital, like nobody. And he says, how are you feeling? And I blurted this out. I said, how am I feeling? I said, I've been insecure and felt inferior my whole life. I said, I'm full of fear. I'm afraid of everything. I'm afraid of failure and I'm afraid of success. I'm sad. And when I'm not sad, I'm numb, which may be worse. And I said, I am lonely all the time. I'm lonely when I'm alone. I'm lonelier when I'm with my friends, and I'm loneliest when I'm with my family. And I don't know what the hell is wrong with me. And I said this almost verbatim. And I thought, my brain told me this. Oh my God, what did you just say? Like, that thing you say to your spouse that you wish you wouldn't have? It felt exactly like that. I wanted to suck it back in. And I'm thinking, he's going to tell me I need to be more grateful. I need to be more positive. Look at all the things I have, stuff like that. And instead, this man looked me in the eye and he said, oh man, I get it. He said, thank you for being honest with me and vulnerable. He said, if you told me anything else, I wouldn't have believed it, but thank you for sharing that with me. And I don't remember the rest of that session. This was back in 2011. I don't remember any of that session, but I remember that distinctly. And I remember leaving there feeling different. I felt different than I had felt. I finally told somebody the truth about how I was feeling. I had stuffed this stuff. I was trying to be this strong guy. I was trying to portray this image. I was trying to keep things down. Like I said, I grew up on a farm and I learned a lot of things, but I didn't learn about emotions. I didn't learn how to process my emotions. I couldn't even identify with them. And that was the start of a new life. And I tell people that day on the bathroom floor, my darkest day, the worst day of my life became the best day of my life. It was the catalyst that put me on a totally different path. And so I kept going to Dr. Gons, and I go to him one time, and he says to me, next time you come, I want you to come in with a list of your priorities. So I go and I'm writing the list, and I've got my wife and I had reconciled. So I'm back on my list. I got my wife, my son, my mom, my dad, my sisters, nephews, nieces, in-laws. I have a list. I have work. I have some things under work. And I think work was middle of the list or a little higher than middle of the list. And there was a reason for it in my own mind. But I go and I hand him the list. And he says, oh, that's a good list. And I'm thinking, awesome. Check the box. And he says, yeah, give me the star, the gold star. And I say to him, he says to me, but it's interesting, where are you on the list? And I said, well, I'm everywhere in here. Like, I'm kind of a part of all of it. And he said, well, humor me. He said, write your name on there. So he gives me a pen and the paperback, and I put my name. And I remember distinctly, I told you this, very distinctly, that I put myself just above work. And the only reason that I did, because I was not going to, and I didn't believe I should be above work, I was actually going to put myself just below work. And the only reason that I put myself just above work is I knew he would call me out on it. I knew him well enough. I'm like, he's gonna call me on this. So I put myself just above work, and I think that I got it right. And I hand it back to him, and he says to me, that's interesting. Why didn't you put yourself first? Mm-hmm. And I said, who would put themselves first? I'm not a narcissist. I said, I couldn't even imagine that. And he says to me, well, this is the problem with human beings. He said, very few put themselves on their priority list, and even fewer put themselves at the top. And he says to me, have you ever saw a champagne glass pyramid where they stack the champagne glasses and they pour it and it flows perfectly to the next glass and the next glass? And I said, yeah. And he said, have you ever saw them fill it from the bottom up? I'm like, no. And he'd do these visualization exercises with me. So he says, well, close your eyes and visualize it and tell me what you see. So I close my eyes and I say something to the effect of, well, it would be inefficient. Like, you'd need way more champagne because it would spill all over, all the glasses would be sticky, and you'd make a mess on the table. And he says, exactly. And that's how you're living your life. He said, you have a champagne glass pyramid. Your priorities are your champagne glass pyramid. You're at the top of your pyramid, and you have a pyramid. Your mom has a pyramid. Your wife has one. Your son has one. Your dad has one. Every single human being has their own pyramid, and you have yours, and you're at the top. Your intentions are great, but you're trying to fill the champagne glasses from the bottom up. And he gave me permission that day to be selfishly selfless. He said to me, if you want whatever you're full of overflows to the next level. If you want to overflow love and patience and kindness and gratitude, or whatever it is, the stuff that you want to overflow to your family, you have to be full of it. He said, that's how he's talking about, the bank account. And so he said to me, you need to go and do things that are healthy, things that are good for you, to fill yourself up with those things so that it overflows. And it's become an obligation and a responsibility to me now. If I want to show up as the best version of myself in the relationships that matter most, then I have to go and do things that are good for me. And so I was all excited. I leave this session and I go home and go home to my wife. And I had taken that weekend off, the upcoming weekend. I had taken Saturday, Sunday off, and I was going to do something with her. And she wanted to go shopping at West Edmonton Mall on this Saturday. And so I had told her I'd go, but I don't like it at all. And so I go home and I say to her, hey, I was at this session and Dr. Gon says, I have to do things for me so that I'm better for you. And so I'm not going to go shopping with you. I'm going to go hiking with my buddy. And she wasn't excited about it, actually. She was a little angry. And so we talk it through, more bit of an argument. And then I'm like, well, here's the reality. This is what you endure every single time. And so it's not going to be any different. We would go to the mall if that's what she wanted to do. And I'd pack the bags and I'd go into the stores and I'd have a smile on my face, and the people helping her would be like, you're so lucky you have a husband that's so nice and kind and he'll shop with you all day. And we'd leave the store, and in between stores, she would have to endure this. It would be like, I'd be like a 5-year-old child. I'd be like, this sucks. I hate it. I'm hungry. When can we leave? I want to go sit in the truck. Then we'd go into a store. I'd put a smile on my face. We'd go out, and I would really be throwing a tantrum. By the time we left, we were fighting. We usually left earlier than she wanted to and way later than I wanted to. And I realized I stole the joy from her experience. This is something she likes. My intentions were good. My intentions were absolutely good. But the reality was I wasn't in a place, I wasn't feeling good enough to add joy to her experience. So I said, let's do this. You go with your sister. I'll go hike for an hour or hour and a half, and then I'll come and meet you. And so that's exactly what we did. And so I meet up with her, and I always tell people I don't want to oversell this but I showed up as a better husband and a better human being. And the experience was better. And when we were driving home, I maybe didn't add joy to her experience, but I certainly didn't take away from it. I was more patient and I was more kind, and we were able to go home. And we both kind of got into this. It was like, well, wait a minute, like this actually works. If I do things, and as I said, it's an obligation and a responsibility. If I truly love my family, I'm going to go and do things that fill me up, because the better I feel, it helps them feel better. And I realized something else in that was, when I'm in their pyramid and I'm empty, they have to work extra hard to try and fill me up. And the other thing was, worse than me being empty and not filling anything is me being full of impatience and intolerance and frustration, because that's what they get.
Absolutely. And I love that story, and it resonates tenfold with me, because I had a similar, obviously your worst moment of your life on the floor of that washroom had a parallel, I suppose, in that when I lost my mom, she was 59, start to finish.
Yeah.
Suddenly I realized, oh my God, I've put myself on hold willingly, by all means, to raise my family and be that good wife and be a good worker. And I had said, later down the road it'll be my turn. And when you realize, you have that kind of earth-shattering moment of, I'm not guaranteed tomorrow. Oh, wait a minute, I need to start thinking about myself. Well, I tell you, I had to Google. Like, I didn't even know where to start. I didn't even realize who I was. And something as silly as, in my prayer, similar to your list, in my prayer when I was thanking people, and I thank God for whatever my health, I never started with my health. I started with everybody else's health. And at the end, I'd
Yeah.
kind of mention myself and feel guilty about mentioning myself. So
No
it's similar
kidding.
to your list. Like, you do it. It's the same thing. So in those moments, I started realizing that I needed to put myself first more often than not, because I'd always put myself on pause. But I want to share with the audience, when you start to do that, but you have not been doing it for so long, expect pushback. Expect a bit of a resilience, or not resilience, but just the people surrounding you. In my case, my husband, when I would say, you're going there, I feel like we're only doing things for you. You can go and do them, absolutely, but I'm just not feeling the headache it would be to pack this sled, to do all that, to get it out there, to fish for an hour, and then come do it all over again. I'm not feeling it today, but I'm going to sit and read a book, and you go do that, and then we'll have dinner together. At first, he was like, well, are you upset with me? Like, what's going on? Like, you always come with me. And I was like, I know, but I didn't realize that I knew that I didn't really love it, but I just did it because the family's doing it, so I'm going to follow. But it was at a cost, and that cost not only
Yeah.
myself, of course, but there was resentment. Whether I
Mhm.
acknowledged it or not, that resentment was accumulating and accumulating and accumulating, and it was impacting all other spheres of my life. So when you start to speak your truth and you start to do it respectfully, I'm not saying to, just completely change your life, but when you start to speak your truth, the resentment that it's held you prisoner for so long, suddenly you feel liberated with every situation that you actually force yourself to speak your truth. So I just
Ab-
wanted to
ab-
share that part of your story really resonates. When you said your wife was like a little upset when you said, I'm not going to go shopping today, I'm going to do something for myself. I've been given permission to put myself first. uh, I get it, because they're not used to that. They're used to us kind of always operating and following suit and coordinating and all that stuff, but we're not really speaking our truth. So in their defense, they had no idea we didn't like it. And honestly, I'd
for,
never, ever said anything. I wasn't
for
like you. I
sure.
was a kid. I was like going through the motions, but just never telling people that I wasn't feeling it.
For sure.
So,
I totally relate to that. And I'm glad that you brought that up. I mean, for me, it really was baby steps. It was like once a week, I'm going to go for a walk with my friends. And I still do that like decades later. I go for a walk with somebody usually every Sunday. And now when I miss a few, my wife's like she can tell, when are you going for your walk? Like, get out of here, go have a coffee with somebody.
me too.
Like, and it's noticeable. But something else that I've learned along the way, and fairly recently actually, is an easy way to start is with just self affirmations. Like, start by looking in the mirror and saying, I am enough and I love you in your name 5 times every morning, and things start to happen. You'll find 10 minutes. And when I speak about this in the champagne glass pyramid, and how as a society we wear selflessness as a badge of honor,
Mm,
to a point where it's so detrimental to us. But here's the thing: it's not only so detrimental to us; it's detrimental to the people that we love the most. And I needed that flip. If he would have told me, if I go and do this, it would be good for me, but it wouldn't help anybody else, my brain wouldn't have comprehended it, and I wouldn't have done it. When I really got it locked in, that if I want to show up loving, kind, patient, tolerant, I want to show up present, I have to do these things. I absolutely have to. So if I want to be with my kid, and I want to give the kid my kid the very, very best of me, then this is what I need to do. And when I speak about this, I often say, as parents, and certainly mothers, I think it's the hardest for them. And I'm not trying to be stereotypical at all here, but so many moms run around. They never want to miss the hockey game, the basketball game, the swimming lessons, piano recital. They want to do the things with their husband. They want to be a good in-law. They want to be a good daughter. They want to be a good sibling, a good friend. And then run out of empty their champagne glass, totally empty it. And so when their toddler comes in from school with a picture that they drew with a crayon, it's often they want to be present. They want to celebrate it. They want to give them a hug and tell them how awesome it is. But it's often like, oh, just 1 minute, just not right now. And so we end up impatient. And then what happened to me when I'd be like that is I would end up feeling guilty. I feel guilty because I'm
all
like,
of that is guilt. It's guilt rooted.
I didn't want to react the way I reacted. And so I tell people, I got permission to be selfishly selfless. I'm giving you permission to be selfishly selfless. Go and do the things. And if you're not going to do them for you, do them because you do love your family. Do them because you do love your kid. Do them because you do love your husband or your mom or your dog or whatever. Go and do it because it will change your life. And when you change your life, it changes the lives of the people you love. It's a law of the universe.
Absolutely. And you spoke of guilt, and I think even as a mother, it's often guilt rooted, right? You're right that society says selflessness is a badge of honor, and that mother who is thinking of herself or is going to, skip out on something, on a family outing, say, you go do this, dad, the kids can spend time with you. I'm just going to go for a run or whatever because you're feeling particularly depleted. Well, there's guilt that comes with that. No, you carry that guilt the whole run. But when you give yourself permission, like you mentioned, when you give yourself permission under the guise that, and I don't know, my French might be coming out there. I don't know if you can say guys in English.
Yes.
Under you tell yourself that I'm doing this to be a better parent. I'm doing this because when I'm done my run,
100%.
I'm going to be a better parent. I'm going to be a better wife. And if you do it with that frame of mind, then the guilt
you release the guilt.
Actually benefit from that activity fully. So definitely, it resonates on so many levels.
100%. And I share this part of my life because I don't want other people. I shared with you that I had a friend one time. I was kind of going and meeting with some folks and drinking coffee once or twice a week with these they're giants in my life now, but these older gentlemen. And I'd share what's going on in my life, and I'm sort of unpacking things, what happened in my day. And one time I was there, and usually go and talk about, still talking about the things that sucked and how I was feeling. And usually it was, sort of the emotions I didn't like, which was good. It was healthy for me. But one time this friend of mine says, he says to me, I have some good news for you, Trev. He said, I'm glad that you come here. Like, it's awesome. And that you share, he said, but I have some good news for you. And I said, what's that? And he said, you no longer have to suffer from terminal uniqueness. And that was like, ow, like, oh my God. But he wasn't wrong, right? What he meant, and he followed up with, you live in a different house, you look different, have a different wife, different kid, different career. But at the end of the day, when you tell me how you feel, when you tell any of us how you feel, or any of us talk about our feelings, at an emotional level, we're exactly the same. So we can identify with all of your emotions and all of your feelings, and they validate it. But I was like, I had kept my feelings inside because I was so fearful of judgment. I was so afraid that if I told somebody I had anxiety, if I told somebody I was sad, if I told somebody I was lonely, I wanted to be this super strong guy. And I tell people I'd done all the, now I talk about my feelings a lot, and it hasn't taken away from my masculinity at all. As a matter of fact, that took me way more courage to do that than it did to go and get beat up in a parking lot by somebody way bigger than me, which has happened. I say I've done all the guy things. I've rode the horses. I've worked with cows. I played the hockey. I've been beat up. Like, I've done the guy stuff. And it turns out I have fear, and I love, and scared, and sadness, and joy, and anxiety, and bliss. To live the human experience. And when I reached out for help, when I finally did, it was because I had to. I got forced to a position, and I am so grateful to God and the universe that I made a different choice that day. And there's too many people who don't. And honestly, in that moment, if I would have had the means at that exact moment, I don't know what would have happened. there was no way for me to really do it. And I was thinking, how could I do this with the least amount of impact on my family? And catching myself in the eye. It was meant to be. I know that now. But
Absolutely.
how many people are suffering in silence because
Yeah,
they're so afraid? And when I reached out for help, when I told somebody the truth I was feeling, I didn't get judged. I actually got support.
you did.
Somebody, I got love from a guy who barely knew me,
Yeah.
and
And he held
so
a
I
mirror
share
up
this
for
belief.
you. Ultimately, it sounds like he held a mirror up for you to be able to see your true self and to see yourself for who you authentically were. While for years you seem to have built this armor, this mask to hide yourself from society, ironically, to meld to the expectations you thought they had of you. So you carved out this costume, this entire mask, by using societal expectations or what you perceived as societal expectations and to
I
mimic
was so
that.
afraid. Yeah, I was so afraid to be me, Lori. And here was the other reality. I had so many masks. If I was hanging out with firemen, I'd be like, "Hey, I'm a firefighter." If I
Yeah.
was with cowboys, I'm a cow. Like, and the reality is, at the end, go into the closet, and I didn't even know which was the real me anymore. I had lost me along the way, and I just so badly wanted to fit in.
And I like what you just said. I'd lost me because that's 100% how I felt in that moment when I realized that I wasn't guaranteed tomorrow and I needed to figure out what I really wanted. And when you think like I don't even know what I like anymore. I remember asking, going for a walk with my husband and saying, "Hey, like I've just had a bit of an aha moment," and I explained to him that I've realized, I tell him how I know that I come last. If I had to put a totem pole in my brain, I was at the bottom because that's how you're supposed to be. But I think that like close to in an airplane, they say put the oxygen on yourself before you put it on the others. And I had
Yeah,
started experiencing anxiety. So all of this was rooted in I had like anxiety that I was trying to figure out what the root causes were. How can I manage this? And I remember walking with him and saying, Eric, I don't even know what I like. And
yeah.
so I said, "Can I ask you, what do you think I like?" How pathetic. I had to ask someone else, "What do you think I like?" And he was like, "You love to dance." I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm pretty sure I can't be a professional dancer." Like, dude, so yeah, you're right. And I
I
remember
love.
even going to Google because I'm a scholar at heart. Who's the best source? Google. How to find how to find yourself again, how to find your life purpose, and it was something along. There were questions, and honestly, the questions were really insightful. It was like stop and reflect. What are some of the things that when you're doing, you lose track of time? What are some of the things
Oh,
when you were younger and your parents would call you in, you'd be like, oh, and I'm not saying hide and go seek because I was always, I wanted to play one more round, but what are some of the things? And then think about and reflect on the attributes. So from a career perspective, for me, those questions were powerful because I was thinking, what are some of the projects that I really loved?
yeah.
What were the specific parts of that project that filled my cup? And in trying to hone in on, okay, what are some of the things I need to reproduce and figure out ways to do more of, those questions were really helpful. So certainly listeners, if you are feeling at a bit of an impasse and you're stuck at crossroads of sorts, in addition to all the wonderful advice we've given so far in this episode, Google how to find your purpose and some of those questions will come up again, and you'll see that they just will spur some reflection, and some of the reflection needed to do a bit of that heavier lifting, if you will, when you're trying to figure out what you really want to become, that future version of yourself, which is in fact likely your authentic initial self from when you were younger that you somehow lost along the way. So in trying to find what that person is, these are questions that are super helpful. So just wanted to share that little piece. And we are at time and I want to continue talking, but the irony of we never script our shows. We share. I knew you were going to share your story. You'd shared it with me, and you haven't even shared like the long. There's even a longer version. But what I kind of like is I think you've shared up to the point where it makes sense for us to start sharing SurePoint story from there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a perfect to be continued stage at the moment. But you also you have a little, speaking of secrets, you happen to have a little secret of a hobby that you found was very helpful in soothing for helping you kind of process life. Can you share with the audience and share that particular piece of work that you shared with me in a video?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had used poetry as an outlet for my emotions, and now that that I'm very empathic, I feel people's stuff, and so I would, even when I would feel something from somebody else of an experience they were going through, I would write poetry, and I didn't really tell very many people for a long time. I told nobody, and then I would a little bit, and it became a bit gimmicky. I could write a poem pretty quick, and but I used it for therapy for me, and I decided. In 2016, I was encouraged to put it into a book. And so I did. And actually, I put it into a book. I got a self-publisher. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my family, not even my wife, that I was doing this. And I was at an airport in Calgary, and I was scrolling through emails from weeks prior, and I saw this one from Tellwell Publishing, who I'd used to help me write this book. And I opened it up, and it said, "Congratulations on the launch of your book. It's on Amazon and some other places." And I was like, I haven't even told a single human being, other than I got one person to help me put it together, that I was even writing, that I was putting this in a book. So I started sending, links to this thing all over the place. But one of the poems in there, and I think it ties in well with this, and I shared it with you earlier, and it ties in really, really good with this. Change your someday to today. And it really is, I speak about it like this. The only thing, and I know this for a fact, the only thing that every single one of us is guaranteed, the only law of nature that applies to every single one of us is this: we all have less seconds to live than we did a second ago. And it doesn't matter if you were born 1 second ago, or if you're my age at 53, or you're 70 or 30. And I think that one of the greatest human qualities is that we believe that the future is going to be better than today. And I've never met a 30-year-old who said, my life sucks so bad right now, but at 60, I'm sure it's going to be worse. It's just going to be worse. And inversely, I've never met somebody who's 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, who's like, my life is awesome. Like, it is so incredible, but I know it's going to be shitty at 65. It's just not how we think. And that's awesome. But what I don't understand is why we believe we have time, and especially believe we have time to do the things that matter most. And so through an experience, and I can share this on the next episode, but through an experience with somebody that I love dearly, a great friend of mine, where he died in front of me, and I gave him CPR and called 911, and they brought him back to life. I ended up after that writing this poem called Someday to Today, and then we launched it as a challenge. And I will challenge everybody who listens to this: watch the poem, and I challenge you to start changing your somedays to today.
And maybe just give a few lines from Someday to Today.
Oh, God. So someday I'll climb a mountain, and someday I'll ride a horse. Someday I'll take that lesson, and I'll finish off that course. Someday I'll learn to fly a plane. Someday I'll ride my bike. Someday I'll sleep beneath the stars and go on that long hike. Someday I'll run a marathon. Someday I'll learn to cook. Someday I'm going to lose some weight and read my favorite book. And then it goes on from there.
And it goes on, and it is a powerful video, folks. We are going to link it in the show notes. Please watch it. Please share it. Let's make that go viral. It is such a beautiful message. It is about unpausing your life. It's about unpausing your dreams and pressing play and making someday into today. So please, please, please do have a peek at it. And we are going to have all of those links in the show notes. If people want to connect, Trev, and want to hear more, or maybe they want to bring you in as a speaker, because you are clearly a very comfortable and you're a very adept storyteller, how can they connect with you?
So I'm on Facebook under my name, LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a really good avenue, or Facebook. And if anybody does connect with me and send me a note, I respond to every single person who does reach out to me. And so I would love to hear from anybody who's interested to learn more, or just interested to meet. And might take me a little bit of time, but I will always get back to everybody. And I love people, and I genuinely do. And I love to meet more awesome folks. So please reach out.
Hear your stories. I love it. And because you are truly people powered, I think. And you are a perfect guest for this show. And when we started talking, I almost felt selfish to ask, but can we do 2 episodes? And someone who to boot is a fellow Canadian. So
Yeah, absolutely.
that was just right there. The winner chicken dinner. Let's do this. Thank you, Trevor, for joining us and for sharing your inspiring story. And the audience looks forward to hearing part 2, where we'll share the secret culture sauce of the secret sauce, not the culture secret sauce. I'm going to get this right, of SurePoint, which is a great company located in Alberta. And I'm anxious for you to understand their stories because it is a unique story. And it's a really inspiring story for any entrepreneur out there in terms of the ups and downs that come inevitably with entrepreneurship and how this company chose to navigate those more tumultuous waters. So thank you for listening, listeners. And as I say every single episode, please take the time to digest and crystallize what you've just heard. Then pick one thing, one action that you could do today based on what you heard, and go do that. Well, folks, thanks for joining us for yet another enriching conversation. To hear more about today's guests, make sure to check out the links in the description of this episode. Want to continue the conversation? Then head on over to our social media platforms, all of which are also linked in the description, to keep it going. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to make sure you don't miss another valuable episode.